From a government in transition while fighting over tariffs to emissions cap analysis and worries over unfilled medical residency positions. Time now for tonight's politics panel, and joining us this evening, former MLA Karen McPherson and Kathy Kerr, freelance writer and editor, longtime Alberta print journalist. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with Mark Carney, soon to be heading up Canada's response to the U.S. tariffs. The Governor General's office confirming the new Liberal leader will be sworn in as Canada's 24th Prime Minister at Rideau Hall Friday morning. Mark Carney also will unveil the picks for his first cabinet. The big question now, when will an election be called? Karen, Mark Carney has promised a seamless and quick transition from outgoing PM Justin Trudeau, but what do you see this transition signifying to Canadians? How big of a shift is this where direction is concerned?
I think we're going to see some laser focus. The fact that the transition is happening quickly is really, really important. A smaller cabinet as well can be a lot more tactical than a larger cabinet. So I'm hopeful that these changes will be as seamless to Canadians and to the negotiations with the United States regarding tariffs as possible.
Kathy, it could be an interesting looking cabinet, as we discussed a moment ago with Randy Boissonnault. Stephen Guilbeault could be out. That's something that our Premier, her cabinet, have been demanding for some time. What are you looking for in the naming of this first cabinet?
Well, I think there's obviously not going to be an enormous amount of change simply because he can't really take anyone who's involved in the tariff issues out of their position or foreign affairs. So I think we'll see those key people like Dominic LeBlanc and Mélanie Joly and Champagne. They will stay where they are. This is to some extent, obviously, a caretaker cabinet for that period during the election campaign, which is going to be coming right away. So I think we won't see an enormous change. I think the fact that he's taking Mr. Guilbeault out is partly an olive branch to our restive premier, who's really got an issue with him. I'll be curious to see if, in fact, you might even double up environment with another portfolio or something along those lines in order to slim things down, because this is not going to be a key issue right at the moment. I think we've already seen a couple of other people are rumored to be out. So it's going to be slim, going to be focused, not going to be hugely different except in areas where there was an irritation that could prevent a national unity file.
Karen, we heard from Edmonton MP Randy Boissonnault at the top on what he feels Mark Carney brings to leadership of the Liberals. What do you expect for dynamics behind closed Liberal caucus doors with Mark Carney in charge?
Well, I think that's a difficult question to answer. You know, outwardly, it appears that he's very inclusive. He wants to create a team rather than more of a top-down. And I think that's smart because he doesn't have a whole lot of political experience. He's going to rely on his cabinet to help him determine the way forward. And I imagine it's going to take a lot of diplomacy and tact, which he used as the governor of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, to be able to manage a cabinet that he's inheriting, essentially.
Kathy, you touched on elections a moment ago. How quickly do you expect the call to come?
I think we're talking early next week, to be honest with you, or certainly next week. I think he has to do it very, very quickly. So I think what's going to come together here is an incredible whirlwind of activity from Ottawa, getting that election going. Carney himself has to find a seat. There's an enormous amount of activity that has to happen. What you were just asking about the caucus, I think that's really what's going to happen in caucus is basically he has to go in there and say, look, we were very united in the actual vote in terms of the plurality I got. He has a personal relationship with a number of the senior cabinet ministers that goes back several years. I think he's just going to say, we need to be focused now on two files, the election and the Americans. So I think that we're going to see that election coming up very, very quickly. He's got to be able to go to Ottawa as a presumptive, not just the leader, but also the leader who has a chance of becoming a prime minister for the next 5 years.
Karen, there could be something before that election call comes. The Globe and Mail reporting this morning that Mark Carney will make his first official trip abroad next week, with stops planned in Paris and London. What do you read into that, especially where the Trump trade war is concerned?
Well, he's gathering solidarity with European leaders. You know, those are going to be the markets that we're going to have to focus on. He already has relationships in Europe because of his experience at the Bank of England, and shoring up those relationships, creating a united front to face the tariffs. The tariffs that we're facing, I mean, they're very specific to us, but countries across the world are facing similar tariffs. And we already have a good relationship with European countries, being a member of the Commonwealth. Shoring up those relationships is going to be extra important, and I believe that's the purpose of his visit.
All right, time for us to take a bit of a break, but when we come back, Alberta's response to new federal analysis on Ottawa's oil and gas emissions cap. More from our politics panel in a moment. Welcome back. The Parliamentary Budget Office is out with new analysis of Ottawa's proposed emissions cap, and it's prompted response from the Smith government.
We have not only done our own analysis, there is industry analysis, and of course independent analysis, all confirming that this emissions cap is absolutely a cap on production. It will curtail energy production. It will impact Canada's GDP, and it of course will impact tens of thousands of jobs, which especially at a time like this is completely and utterly unacceptable.
The PBO analysis indicates that while implementing the cap by 2032 could see a reduction in Canada's gross domestic product, production in the oil sands could increase by about 11%. The report does not account for any of the potential benefits of reducing emissions. Kathy, what's your read on how this PBO report is being interpreted, and how much of a window of opportunity does it offer the Smith government?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be a relatively short window of opportunity for the Smith government, because you have some very, very good economists who are saying that this report is very, very narrow in terms of its terms and in terms of what it includes and doesn't include. I was reading today, Andrew Leach is saying, what the heck were they thinking? I mean, it really doesn't, it makes assumptions about absolutely no attempt at carbon mitigation between now and the beginning of the emission targets being put in, and that will continue. It makes a lot of assumptions, and the assumptions all are ones that support what the Smith government has been saying, that this is a production cap. The other issue is they're making it sound like this is going to affect jobs immediately. First of all, we're not talking about until 2032. And also what we're talking about is how much it would have increased without these emission caps as opposed to with. So it's not like we're talking about a reduction. We're talking about a slower growth in terms of jobs in theory here. A lot of this, like I say, is in theory, and there's a lot that can happen in geopolitics between now and 2032. So I think what's happening is a narrow window here, and the Smith is making hay out of the narrow window.
Karen, where do you think this will leave debate over? One side calling it a pollution cap, the other side calling it a production cap.
The PBO has done a very poor job of comms on this issue. They actually released a clarifying statement this morning. So you know things have gone badly when within 24 hours you've had to clarify what you've had to say. The context is too narrow. So in terms of how anyone can take advantage of it, like Kathy was saying, it's a short window of time. I think we're going to see some maybe retractions or a reissue of the statement soon. It has not played well. I don't think it's met its goal in trying to clarify information for people, and it's being used as a political bludgeon rather than being factual information that can be used for public policy discussion.
Kathy, one more quick one on this. How likely is this report to be on the immediate radar of the Carney cabinet with an election looming? Or does this whole issue of implementing an emissions cap get sidelined, maybe left for the next elected government to either embrace or abandon?
I think absolutely it's going to be sidelined. In any case, there was going to be a gap between the emissions cap being put on. And today, I think everything has been sidelined by the tariff issue in the meantime. So I think you will have this sort of fall to the back of the current government's mandate. And you're right, we're going to have to see what happens with the next government. But for the time being, we're not going to be hearing a lot about this.
All right, one more topic. Alberta doctors expressing concern over the number of unfilled medical residency positions in our province.
We have a government that paid $2 million for a pretty questionable COVID report, and there have been signs of interference within the medical profession. So I think all those things play into where students are choosing to go.
Every year, Canadian students rank their location preferences and are matched with medical residency programs. The College of Family Physicians of Canada says 11% of the country's unfilled seats are in Alberta. That includes 31 family medicine spots and 5 specialist seats. Karen, a spokesperson for the health minister calls the concerns exaggerated, pointing to recruitment problems across the country. Bottom line, a sign fewer people are applying for family medicine?
Well, I think that might be part of it, but also how competitive is Alberta in attracting both residents and doctors to the province? I was just watching a report out of BC yesterday where they have been pretty successful in recruiting foreign doctors generally, and they're focusing on the U.S. And Alberta could really do well to focus their efforts on being competitive in those markets in terms of attracting doctors. Right now, we've got individual communities that are trying to attract doctors. So if it's that hard to attract regular doctors that are already fully qualified, I don't think it's any wonder that we see that residents really aren't that excited about practicing in Alberta.
Kathy, how much weight do you give the concerns raised by the AMA?
I think there is some weight there. I think because realistically, if you're looking down, and a lot of doctors are looking down a mountain of student debt, no news is good news. You want to be in an extremely stable jurisdiction where you know that after your residency, there is going to be a position open, that it's going to be comfortable, that you're not going to get embroiled in some kind of bizarre policy issues related to the healthcare system. Right now in Alberta, there seems to be a bit of chaos. I think chaos when you're trying to set a course for your future career is something you really don't want to enter into.
Karen, is there an opportunity here for the health minister to step up to the microphone and send out a message that might encourage some of these young new doctors to embrace our province?
I think the health minister is focused on revamping the way that our healthcare system works, with the transition to the 4 pillars, trying to define which pillar is going to be responsible for which function of healthcare. I don't think attracting residents and doctors is really top of priority for her right now.
Kathy, one more round of residency placements takes place in April. How worrisome is it if these vacancies end up going unfilled? What's to be read into that where healthcare in Alberta is concerned?
I think what the Smith government has to do is take a step back and take a look at whether the external impression of what's happening in healthcare is affecting this province's reputation as a home for medical professionals, or professionals of any kind for that matter, but medical professionals particularly. They might have to be starting to mend some fences and not necessarily promote, but rather maybe fix some impressions or step back a little bit from the breakneck speed of what they're doing with the medical system.
Karen, United Nurses of Alberta has a tentative agreement with the province now, a good sign where this whole big picture is concerned?
I think so. I hope so. It's been, a long time. We've got other unions in the province that are striking or thinking about striking. So finding some common ground, I think, is hopeful and really important going forward for all kinds of services, healthcare, education, other things that we rely on as the Albertans. So, yeah, I am hopeful about that.
And Kathy, that UNA agreement, what kind of path does that set forward for other unions who may be negotiating or heading into mediation?
The UNA is so dominant in the medical field. I think that it probably is a very good sign, actually, for the government in this particular case. I think that other unions will take a look and say, okay, maybe we can work with this government afterwards. I think that there's been some hesitancy to take anything at face value that they're seeing from the government, but I think the UNA settling probably does give the government a little bit of cred when it sits down to the negotiating table.
All right. We'll have to leave it there for time. Good to see you both. Thank you kindly.
Have a good night.